Hello, everybody. This is the CircuitPython Weekly for December 11th, I think, 2015. I'm Scott. I work for Adafruit on CircuitPython, kind of as the lead. We also have Tony DeCola and Dan Halbert, who are paid to work on CircuitPython as well. Did I say 2015? It's 2017. I know what year it is. Thanks for the correction, Kattni. So this is a weekly meeting we do between both the active developers and our community members. We cover all sorts of CircuitPython related things, including any outstanding issues, guide writing, support forums, support stuff. So this is a place that we get together and talk about all that. The format of this is I'll do a quick state of CircuitPython to begin with. Then we'll go down and do hug reports, which are a way of people thanking other people for the work they've done. And by doing that, we also reinforce what's valuable to us as a community, which is really good. So think about what you want to see more of and call that out and say it's awesome. After hug reports, we'll do a status update. And that's the basic idea of like what's on your radar as far as like what needs other people's attention. What are you working on so that other folks can get an idea for that as well. So I'll start off with the state of CircuitPython. In general, we're kind of at this like holiday push where a lot of people for the holidays in a couple weeks are going to be getting CircuitPython boards, and so we have to be aware that we're going to get a lot of beginners in the next few weeks here, and we're doing a lot of work to prepare for that as well. So lots of library improvements and guide improvements, and looking to fix some bugs in 2.0 or 2.x, which if you're watching this recording in the chat, you can see some discussion of some bugs in 2.1 going by as well. So that's kind of our focus up through the end of December here, as people get their gifts and really start to poke at CircuitPython. So that's kind of where we're at, and planning on refocusing on 3x, which is the master branch and features SAMD51 M4 support. We'll refocus early in January to really hammer that home and get 3x out. So that's the high level. The lower level in the last week is we've had 3 pull requests merged by 2 people, which is relatively low for us, but that's because we're focused on other stuff right now. 2 closed issues by 2 people and 2 open, so we're net neutral on issues. And then in terms of downloads, it's right on pace with kind of what we've been seeing, which is about 280-ish downloads a week, primarily focused on the Circuit Playground Express and the Trinket M0. So that's no surprise. So that is the state of CircuitPython portion of this video. And sorry if you can hear me typing. I'm trying to take notes that will be in the description of the YouTube video. So we'll move on to hug reports. Hug reports is a chance for us to thank people for the work they've done. I've got 4 this week. First, I wanted to call out RiSpy on Discord, who's also been on Show and Tell and is also on GitHub. They found and fixed a bug with the MCP9808 temperature sensor, where our library didn't actually work in sub-zero temperatures correctly. So not only did he find that problem, but he also fixed it too on GitHub, which was really cool. I also wanted to call out Cold Reactor on Discord for helping Crimson Kringle with TeraTerm problems on Discord. That was really cool. They both have joined the CircuitPython channel recently and been really helpful and engaged, which is awesome. I want to thank Kattni, Jerry, Dan, Lady Ada, and Mr. mcwethy for all your help testing all the lint stuff I did last week. It was really cool to see other folks taking the initiative to not only test it, but also actually get it merged in and released, which was great. And finding bugs that I did too. work fast, and thank you for validating the work that I was doing. And lastly, shout out to Andon and Summersoft for the board ID discussion that's happening on a GitHub issue. The idea being that we need an API to read the unique ID of the boards that we have, and there's a lot of really good discussion there, which is great, and I'm excited to see that hit 3x. So those are my hug reports. Tony, do you have any?
Hey, does the microphone work?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool. Yeah. Oh no, no updates for me.
Okay. Andon, any hug reports?
My hug report is kind of an echo of yours. Thanking Summersoft for the work he's going to be doing and doing already on the unique ID. Awesome. It looks a lot more complicated than I expected it would.
Well, it's good to think it through thoroughly, I think. Okay. Carter?
Just a group hug again this week for me.
Group hug. Dan?
Everybody, but especially Lady Ada, who's stayed up till 3 a.m. over the weekend, rewriting some PDM code that is now a guide for me to fix some problems.
Awesome.
So things are working, and I'll tell you more later. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you to you both for taking audio on. I don't have a great loving history with it. Deshipu, any hug reports from you?
Nothing.
All right. I2C is away. Jerry?
Just to the group for an incredible weekend of activity, especially Kattni and Dan and you, Scott, for pushing out all that stuff.
I was not working very much this weekend,
but it was fun to watch. Even though I was laying tiles in the bathroom most of the time, but
that's valuable too. For sure, housework is good. Kattni.
Yeah, I've got a few. I want to thank Dan for all his help over the weekend with the update I needed to do to the CircuitPython Express API. And thank you for helping. I know you said you weren't working too much over the weekend, but you did help me out. And also thanks for just being so supportive about everything. I want to shout out to John Park for rocking it out on the AdaBox projects. I've been helping him with that, but he has been doing an amazing job with that. I want to give a shout out to Wolf. He was at a hackathon this weekend and chose to do stuff with the Circuit Playground Express, and so he got to introduce that to a bunch of his coworkers, and they all worked on that,
cool.
Like writing up different stuff for it. And I also want to give a hug report to Kurt. He's slowly working his way back in. Obviously, with a new baby, it's tough to do anything. So he's been doing what he can to stick with it, and so I just want to give a shout out to him.
Awesome, great. All right, so that is it for hug reports, I think. Yep. Thank you all for being here, and we're rolling today, so we'll roll right into status updates. I didn't actually pre-write mine, so let me think. I think it's in general library updates to lint it. So linting is this idea that you can do, you can run a program over code to find common mistakes and get notified about those common mistakes and stylistic things as well. So what I've been doing is well, not just me, but other folks have been helping as well. But last week I was updating a lot of our existing libraries to both automatically run that lint check every time that new code gets submitted, so that we know that going forwards it stays lint free, so to speak. But also that I went through and fixed the existing lint issues as well, which will both hopefully find bugs, make our code more consistent, and make our APIs more consistent as well. So that's my main focus. Along with that, it's a new build system, so we get zip files out instead. So we actually have, whenever we will release libraries, we'll actually have multiple quote unquote builds for different versions of CircuitPython for like 2x versus 3x example. So I'm going to continue that until it's all done. Gonna continue on my just get all the code out there, and then I'll circle back and do all the fixing for the things that still need to be tested and merged in. So that's where I'm at. Tony, where are you at?
Hey, let's see. So lots of guide updates and libraries last week. So
Nice.
all the 9DOF sensors, the FXO S8700 and FXAS. That one's, the library is all good and guide updated. The LSM9DSO and DS1, it's another set of 9DOFs.
Mm-hmm.
Those are updated and all good. And then the Max 31865, that's the platinum thermocouple. That one's all updated, library guides. Let's see, character LCD backpack driver. Basically, you take the character LCD and you put on this backpack that handles all of the parallel communication. That one's got an update to the library, and the guide is updated to show that usage. And then photocell usage, infrared brake beam, those guides are updated. There are no libraries that go with those.
Okay.
Last week that are updated, but just waiting for some reviews, like the color sensor and stuff like that. So that was
great work. That's a lot of updating. And the Care LCD stuff looks really cool too. I really like how you did that. Andon?
I've been learning the Learn system.
Learning the Learn system.
And figuring out how I want to tackle a guide for all the examples I had planned.
Cool. And you got set up with author rights, right?
Yep.
Sweet. Awesome. I look forward to that. Carter.
Not a whole lot. I've kind of been distracted by a lot of non-Adafruit stuff since the last meeting. I managed to cookie cutter the stuff related to the one wire. I think we kind of have that more or less all figured out design-wise, so I just need to clean it up and put it in the right repos and get the PRs back to you, which I hope to do soonish, and then we'll be good on one wire.
That'd be awesome. It does look really good. Just ping me when you need eyes on it.
Yep, will do.
Sorry, I'm sneezing. C. Grover, you have any updates, both hug reports and status updates?
The hug report is for Dan, the work that he did on Atom to get it to close out files on Windows. That was a big deal for me. I've tested it a few times, and although it's not instantaneous, but that's an issue of Windows. That was a really great confidence builder for me as I'm starting out on this stuff. So big thanks to Dan.
Awesome. And how are your projects going?
Oh, status wise, you know, I've reached a point where I've stopped developing the algorithms. I've got some real good ideas, I think. But I'm trying to build a more of a CircuitPython survival environment. I'm starting to collect the things that I need to have the references so that I can. It's hard to explain. I grew up in an environment learning to program with a lot of printed reference guides, and so I've got a couple of them sitting here, C++ and that kind of stuff.
Right.
CircuitPython is a little more mysterious and requires a whole lot more searching for, you know, what are the base functions and how do they perform, and so I'm building kind of a reference library of things that are working for the projects that I have in mind.
Like reference material?
Pardon?
Like reference material?
Yeah, like reference materials, and it seems like that when I need to accomplish something, I've got to go search for how does that function perform and what are the limitations of that, and I get surprised a lot that there are functions and things already done out there that I just had no way to know about. And I mean, that's just part of the environment, and I'm okay with that. It's just that I have to build some crutches for me.
Well, those sound like really valuable resources, so I hope you share those.
Oh, I definitely will. I mean, if they help anybody get into this for the first time, because that's what I'm doing, and who has a particular set of ingrown habits that I have, that, where I've got to have something printed that I can look at occasionally just to spark my way of thinking. And I purchased a few books to get some ideas about, different ways to program in Python and different projects. But it's a lot of random information at this point. I'm just trying to piece it together.
Okay, well, keep us posted on how that goes. It's all super early for us, so we're still very keen on getting it the onboarding experience better.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, though. I mean, the fact is, you guys are moving really quickly on getting this thing established and getting an environment that is friendly to everybody who approaches it. And so I know I'm a little bit on the edge of things here, and
You're just,
so I'm not this is not frustration. This is really just the fun of discovery.
Well, I think you're moving fast with us. That's what I would say.
Well, you may think so, but
I think you are.
I've got a weight tied to my ankles right now. I'm trying to figure this one out.
All right. Well,
so I appreciate your patience.
Yeah. Well, we're always here if you have any questions.
I've discovered that, and I take advantage of that. So
Sweet.
Thanks.
No problem. Dan, where are you at?
Since like early last week, but after this meeting, I put bidirectional SPI into
2x, right?
2x, right? And that'll go into the next release. And there are some upcoming hardware products that will use that. So and then since then, I've mostly been working on making the audio recording work and figuring out what's wrong with the microphones on the Circuit Playground Express. And I got a couple more Circuit Playgrounds, and sort of the upshot is now I have it working again. And Lady Ada came up with some more code, which is helpful to me. That she rewrote some Arduino code that an initial library that she'd worked on, and there's an outstanding issue about making the microphone clock run all the time, which I did, and that completely solves the problem of having to wait for the microphone to start up, because it's ready immediately, and then so now I can record audio, and the more rewrote the filter loop. I had done some preliminary work to figure out how to speed it up, and she sort of finished that off about mainly loop unrolling and making the inner loop be really tight.
Yep.
And that's done. And I can record I recorded an A440 tone, and you can hear it. The filter we're using is still tends to have a lot of noise in the upper end, but it's not clear whether we can really get rid of that or not and still keep up. But it all works, and so maybe it's we can discuss later, like at what point we should sort of cut this off and say, well, we'll put this in 2.2. But all the bugs have been fixed. The sample rate has to be at least 16 kilohertz, which means that you really cannot record very much audio, like a half a second if you're lucky,
right?
On the CPX or something.
Yeah.
So we might want to think about how to write that to Flash or to the SPI Flash or something. But in the short run, it means that things like the sound level meter stuff will work.
Awesome.
Better now. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good start.
And all the weird problems that we had before will disappear. So that's
a pretty bold claim. I hope that's true.
I think so.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate all your work on that.
All right.
Deshipu, do you have a status update?
I did practically nothing this week. I had the version 6 of the PCB of the console of mine.
The micro console?
Yeah, and I found some issues, and I skipped over version 7, and now I have 8.
Yeah, and you
sending to the clubhouse, and hopefully that will be fine.
Awesome. That would be super cool.
But otherwise, I didn't do anything.
All right. Well, I'm super excited about the micro console work. So thanks for filling us in on where you're at with that. Jerry?
Other than renovating bathrooms, I did get a few things done. Well, thanks for getting me able to create and edit guides. That was hopefully I can be of some help with that. Did edit my first guide. That was pretty cool to do a little trivial update to the BME 280 guide. Hopefully I did it right. So if not, let me know.
Okay, I can take a look at that.
I just updated a couple of the figures and a little bit of the text just to because of the changes.
Yep.
And then now I'm in the process. I just downloaded all the new releases and building boards and trying things. So I'll let you know how that goes.
Thanks, I really appreciate that.
And update. And then I did have a question. There was a post that to the forum about the AMG 88XX that was still using read underscore into. I don't know if you saw that. I posted it to and my question is you had updated the that library for the new build stuff, but it looks like it still had their old read into in it. So I made a comment in the review section. Is that the appropriate place, or should I have made a comment in the just general comments on that? Or doesn't it not matter?
Or if I broke it, like if I moved it back to the old read into, it should go on.
I don't think it ever got updated.
Yeah, then I would just do another pull request and fix it.
Okay, so but because you already have a pull request in to do some other changes, so that's why I wouldn't want to open one that was going to conflict. That was not matter because there's a standing pull request on there now to do the updates, which made some changes to that, a lot of changes to that directory.
Yeah, it's okay if you fix, like, because the fix for read into is so small, like I would just do it based on whatever master is and just get it fixed before the other stuff.
Okay, I'll put a pull request in there, then a separate pull request in for that. But you'll see the note there. That's all it was about.
Okay.
But the user who posted the forum, I suggested they just modify their local copy of it, and that worked for them, so they're happy.
Okay, great. And that was in the MicroPython forum?
Actually, I think it may have been in the general projects forum. They were trying to follow the guide to build some thermal I don't even know what the device is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a grid-eye 8x8 thermal camera.
So I think it was actually in general project or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, and you can always post links to those things in the CircuitPython chat so that we find them as well. Because I only monitor the CircuitPython forum.
Okay.
And if people pull me onto other threads, then I'll subscribe to those as well. But besides that, I don't really look at everything else.
Can't imagine why not.
Yeah, I gotta work at some point. Cool. Well, thanks for that, Jerry. Kattni.
Yeah. So I've been busy.
Yeah.
I published the Welcome to the Community Guide, which I believe happened after the last meeting.
Okay.
I am nearly basically done with the Welcome to CircuitPython guide, which is crazy. I've been testing libraries. We have been helping John Park with the AdaBox project, which he ran into some issues with, and so I ended up doing a marathon session there and getting the Circuit Playground Express API updated with a feature that resolves that issue. It's a touch threshold change so that the touch pads, when they're hooked up to other things, can be made to be less sensitive. So that they're not interfering with each other. It's the same issue I ran into with my project, and once I do get time, I'm actually going to go back and update my original guide with this update because super needed at that time too.
Yeah.
Other than that, I guess I mentioned I've been testing libraries, and I need to finish up the Welcome to CircuitPython guide. And now that once we get the microphone fix in, I definitely want to. I already have the sound meter basically ready to go into the API. It was just once we ran into issues with it on different CPX boards,
Yep.
I didn't add it. So it's essentially ready to go. That won't be a lot of work to get that added in. And I want to have that in for when we release whichever one is going to ship on the CPX.
Yeah, 2.2.
Yeah, so I want to have it ready for 2.2 so that it's so the feature's there, so people can also do that through the API.
Awesome. That'll be super cool.
Yeah, and
great
other
work.
than that, thank you.
Lots of stuff, and I'll get back to you on the welcome to CircuitPython guide a little bit later. Lady Ada, do you have hug reports and status update? Write it in the chat, and I can read it out. And also, folks, if you have any other topics you want to cover, we can brainstorm those now as well. Bunch of work on PDM mic. Dan is being awesomely helpful. Yeah, spoiler alert. If you don't want to know what's in the next Ada box, close your ears. It's already shipped, but who knows if people opened it already. Lady Ada says, "Mwahaha." So yeah, Seagrover. Sorry we spoiled it for you. Tested a bunch of drivers that are linted. Yeah, thanks for doing that. Yeah, for those of you who don't realize it, I've been somewhat saying, like, beware, we're going to have a lot of beginners in the next few months. It was because I knew the Ada box was coming. So yeah, keep an eye out for lots of beginners from Ada box 6 coming in and wanting to learn more about. You expected it. Cool. Any other topics that people want to talk about? I think we're all pretty much heads down, which is amazing given that it's the middle of December.
One little thing, I was kind of curious, do we want to talk about the different lint rules and, like, you know, what our thoughts are for them, like which ones we want to enable versus disable and stuff like that? Because I think some of them, it looks like we've landed on a pretty good convention for them. And I also, too, just wanted to correct one little thing. It was, I don't even think you probably realized it, but you said style mistake earlier, Scott. And I guess we should just be super clear with folks that it's not a mistake to do something in a different style. Like, you know, if you're like, don't feel bad that, that the linting tool told you that you had too many spaces or whatever here. You know, it's just a different, like, preference for how the code is laid out. So semantic term, but you know, just want to make sure folks kind of realize, like, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. But anyways, so I think some of the rules, like vertical alignment, it looked like, you know, we turned that off for constant values. Like for me personally, it's easier to scan and do kind of the reverse lookup. So that one makes sense. The one I want to talk about, though, was the pilot rule for variables that are less than 3 characters long. I don't know. I'm kind of curious if that one makes sense to keep turned on or not. Like, so my argument would be variables that make sense to be small single character ones, you know, like when you're iterating through a loop variable sometimes. And so I've seen a lot of the changes are to change from I to underscore. And it's arguable whether, you know, which one's right or wrong. I don't even want to say one's right or wrong, like, you know, which one you prefer or not. But the one tricky thing, if you switch to underscore, where that breaks down is nested loops. So when you have like 4i in range and then 4j in range, you know, like multiple levels, that's hard to convert to, like, you do like underscore at that point. So I don't know. I would say that's one reason maybe to consider single variable. And then the other is I've noticed some changes, like internally, lots of devices have, you know, a DC pin, a data command line, or an EN enable line, or an RS line. So like these little 2 character long things, which are like the name on the board. You know, that's if you're using an initializer and you're looking at like, what is this DC thing? Oh, well, that's the data command line that I want to connect to. So I think that's probably a case where it makes sense to have less than 3 character long variable names for it. So, oh yeah, XYZ, I guess Carter was just mentioning too. So
yeah, so
that's kind of an annoying one for the accelerometers. So yeah, so I don't know. I was kind of curious, like, would it make sense to just disable that globally, or where we see cases add, the comments and things?
Right. So as Kattni points out, there is a whitelist against that. So the I conversion to underscore is not actually because of the I. It's because in the places that I'm changing it, it's not used in the loop itself. So underscore is a way of saying, like, I don't actually care about the value, just make it disappear. So
I guess if we do run into cases like DC, RS, EN, that type, XYZ, maybe we want to add those to the list of...
Yeah, so I added XYZ, I believe.
You did.
But it's possible that some of the earlier stuff that I did didn't have it. I'll actually just link to it here so we know where it is, because I have been adding things like that. I think that it's a little less clear cut for things like RS, DC, and EN, because as you were talking about them, you're talking about them with longer names as well, like reset, enable, data command. And I don't think that's a bad thing that if we called them their long names. We can always write docs that say that, like, on the board, this is usually EN or that sort of thing.
Yeah, right. There's no kind of clear cut way to do it. Like, in a lot of cases, I try to think of it, okay, in the initializer, when I want someone to pass a pin in, I'm going to name it exactly the name on the board, so there's no confusion at all between, like, okay, what am I hooking this thing up to for this? But I've noticed I don't think Pylint actually cares much about the length in the variable names. At least it didn't seem to complain about some stuff there, so who knows? Maybe it's not as strict about that. And then I guess for that list of variable names, is that just copied to every repo, or is there any way to maybe centralize it potentially? Like, it might be kind of cool. I guess the cookie cutter repo is maybe the place to say that's the central repo.
Yeah, that's kind of what my approach has been, is when I'm creating exceptions for a particular library, instead of changing the Pylint RC, I'm adding disables in the library itself instead.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, right?
And then we can validate that, like, the Pylint RC is actually the same across all the repos. So that's the approach I would take. And as you, I think, point out, is that you should always use your discretion with the lint stuff. Like, if you really think that something should be named something that Pylint disagrees with, like, you can override it.
Right. Yeah, and it's not like a blanket, just turn everything off at the top of the file and it will pass.
Yeah.
Pylint
does some really cool...
There are sometimes cases where it makes sense.
Yeah, and Pylint's actually pretty good about scoping your disables and stuff to reasonable scopes as well.
Variable names. So is, like, because I'm just kind of wondering, like, where is the canonical list that we want to keep that? So the cookie cutter config, is that, kind of the place to keep it then?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Do we want to have some eventually Adabot like update library if we did update something in cookie cutter, like Travis or something, either .travis.yaml or something like this? Do we want it to propagate to all the libraries?
Yeah, we can do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What you can do is you can do checks about you can actually, like, get the SHA of a version of a file in a repo, and I'm using that to be like, is the read the docs YAML file exactly what we expect? For example, I can just get the contents of that file using the GitHub API and then just look at the SHA and say, like, yes, it is, no, it's not. And then
I have to say, like, some modules, and I was actually just about to suggest that you could have a submodule potentially that stores all of your Adabot specific state, things like the Pylint RC. It could pull that all in. And the cool thing with that is when someone just does a simple clone of the repository, they don't necessarily get all of that extra state that they don't necessarily need to see potentially for it. So I don't know, it could be interesting.
Submodules do need to be bumped, though. Like submodules are fixed commits of the sub repo.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So like Adabot, right, as a part of its update, it'd have to go and like, submodule update, and then, clone or whatever, pull down the latest version, run all of its stuff.
Right.
But it is a lot easier to keep it up to date that way. Is there stuff that are there mechanical problems because some of those things have to be at the top level, like conf.py or something?
Yeah. Yep.
That's the only thing. That's the only problem with the submodule. I mean, you could
exactly. Yeah.
We could use symbolic links, but won't work all the time. But there is symbolic link support. So
yeah,
I think that's actually a good idea because it makes the updating much more straightforward.
If it's a submodule.
Yeah, if it's a submodule. I don't know any other way to do it. So yeah, I know. Lamore is right about
right.
Yeah, Pylint RC is copied verbatim though, so that's a good point. The other thing we could do is we could have Travis pull the Pylint RC down.
That might not be
That's a good idea.
Automatically, also. The problem is that if you're running it locally, you don't have the file.
What if, like, I don't know, this is kind of weird. You could kind of, the whole update process so that every repo has a script that effectively does the entire kind of Travis build check process, or whatever. But I don't know, that might be too complex.
No, I think that's a good idea because then you can have Travis call that script too.
Exactly right. Like it just pulls
there
it
is
down.
a program in Python, Python tool that does that. That's called Tox. Basically a test runner, but it set up it does all that.
Is that TORX?
TOX, yes.
Okay.
In the Python mode.
Or it's pretty nice. One of the test running tools. I think there's like Nose is another one, and yeah, there's some good stuff.
All right. Well, y'all are scaring me because we're like halfway redoing all of it to begin with.
Regarding the variable names.
Yeah.
This is just my thought. Part of the reason we're doing all this is to have a consistent front. So when other people come in and are either writing libraries or updating libraries for us, we don't have to tell them anything about how to do it. They can run Pylint, and Pylint can tell them, for us to help with that consistency.
Right.
I think it might make more sense to do the locally disabling Pylint over variables that you think are appropriate for your program, because that's twofold. Number one, we're not changing it globally, and number two, what that means is someone else who goes through that, runs into that Pylint error, finds your code and sees, okay, this is an okay variable for me to use.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's better because it sticks with the consistency, but also provides a much clearer example when you are using something that isn't necessarily right in line with how Pylint wants to do it.
Right. Yeah, and I think having that process of just, is this what I want, even if we choose to do it to go against what Lint's suggesting, I think that's really valuable.
Though, kind of like Kattni said, it definitely should be something that the library writer can run themselves locally to check.
Yeah.
So like, it could just be here's the one Pylint command to run or whatever, or maybe it's run this script or something.
Right.
And that's what I've been doing. I've been running Pylint locally, and it was in reading through how to fix some of the issues I ran into that it was pointed out that it's best to be clear that it's okay to have your code go against Pylint, but it's better to be clear that it is, so that when other people are looking at it, they know what to expect of the situation.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, that's really good discussion about that. I think we should feel like we have the tools to be able to go in and tweak how things are done with Pylint. Another thing I was thinking about is some people use a number of Python linters, and I really wanted to settle on just one. That's why I picked Pylint, is because it could do some higher level analysis about like variables that are not in use, that sort of thing, imports that aren't in use. But it can also do the things like this person used tabs everywhere rather than spaces. So I'm pretty happy with it so far. I hope you guys are seeing that we can at least refine it to a point where we're happy with it.
From what I understand, it's the more aggressive of all of them, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it seems like it hasn't been so bad to use it. And I mean, we're early enough on that it's not like we have 100,000 line code base, where it's like really tricky.
Yeah.
There's PEP 8, which is a tool that strictly does PEP 8.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's PyFlakes. PyFlakes, I think, like does PEP 8 plus a little bit more stuff. And then Pylint is, I think, like PEP 8 plus all this. There's extra stuff that it does beyond that. That seems to be kind of the more aggressive one. I would just go for like whatever one seems to be maintaining the most. I think is Pylint.
You add stuff to PEP 8, whatever rules you want. For instance, in OpenStack we have called hacking that adds a lot of checks to PEP 8, to Flake 8.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I will link it in a moment.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a really good start, and once we get through this process of having to do it, we should feel free that we can change the checks we're running or add checks when we find, as we feel like we need them.
Also, something to be aware of, which I learned this weekend, is there's apparently 2 ways to disable things. One is by using and I don't know if this applies to everything, but at least for mine it did, where you can include the number that references the message you're disabling, or you can include an actual, like the descriptor. It's more of a descriptor. So it's not just, disable R904. It's disable maximum sub or maximum public methods or something like that. So then it's easier when you're reading it.
Can we disable doing it by number?
I don't know. I can look into that.
That would be really nice, because the numbers are not useful at all.
No, I very much stumbled onto what it was to fix that, and it was Dan that told me how to do it the other way, so I'm really glad that he was paying attention to that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could just like not need that check again. If we can just make it not work.
That's an interesting idea, yeah.
All right, anything else anybody wants to talk about?
I'll just, I noticed, we've had a couple of people in the forum say, like, where is the CircuitPython stuff is disorganized, and some people are, but I think I was going to reply to that latest one and say it's on the way, basically. So
yeah,
because
what do you think they're looking for?
Maybe worth talking about.
I think they're looking for exactly what Kattni's working on, which is the intro guide.
I don't think they are.
You don't think so?
No, I think they're looking, and actually that was something, I didn't know if we wanted to talk about this during the meeting or not.
Yeah.
What they're looking for is a centralized location for all of the current guides, with links to all of them, and apparently a suggested order even. Is that something we want to add to this guide, because it would be tough to keep up with? It would only be, as of right now. Either that or we have to like stay on it and update it constantly.
Right.
Or do we just want to add a link because if we just add a link to the CircuitPython category, I assume that people have already found that and find that is to be too disorganized. Like that's, and also we need to figure out whether or not we can have a top level CircuitPython category, because it's buried under 2 different things right now. And multiple people have come to me asking about that.
Yeah, that needs to be cleaned up. We need to split CircuitPython and MicroPython. And as Tony cleans up the MicroPython ones, some of that will go away. And the Learn Guide, we can now promote 5 or 10 things to be the top. you can force us a presentation order for the first few ones.
Is that featured?
Yeah, so we can put like the
Okay.
intro guide that you're writing to be the absolute top one, and then like the community guide and maybe the guides for CPX and Gemma and Trinket can be way at the top.
Yeah, so like Lady is saying, actually, it's not, unfortunately, for when you hit the category page, I think you're just getting a full list in whatever order it pulled from the database. When you do a search, you can actually override and say, if someone searches for LIS 3DH, the CircuitPython one should be at the top or whatever. It has a higher priority than maybe the Arduino one for them. So, but just a call though, there are two categories. There is a MicroPython and a CircuitPython category.
But neither of them are available at the top. You have to click on programming or microcontrollers.
One, which is kind of like you got to hunt for it. So I totally agree on that it would be cool to have a central page. But I mean, I kind of wonder. It almost feels like there should just be some static page somewhere that's trying to rely on all this indirection of like bumping search results or hoping things are categorized the correct way. I mean, it seems like you really want some explicit curation to say, these are this is the starting guide, go this first if you're completely new to Python. Hey, you already know programming. All right, here are the 5 guides that tell you about, digital analog IO. Like, here's how you take your Arduino knowledge and convert it to CircuitPython. And then here's maybe another section of, here are cool projects. So like, check out, all this fun stuff maybe John Park and everyone has done. And these are all examples of neat things to look at. Because I kind of agree, like there's just a big category and everything gets thrown into it. But it's, if you're coming at this with different needs. Like, some people are completely new and don't even know what Python is, versus others are like, well, I know Arduino. I just need to figure out how to take my Arduino stuff and make it work in Python. And then other people are just like, I just want to see what can this do, or just give me ideas of projects and stuff. Maybe libraries should be another category too.
The guide basically it's a board agnostic introduction to, or a board agnostic welcoming to CircuitPython. It's how to install it, not specific to any boards. It goes through Blinky in some pretty great detail, since that's the only board agnostic program. And it talks about connecting to the serial console, and I'm talked about the basic usage of the REPL. And then the last page, I'm still not sure, or even if this is going to be the last page, or if they want more to be added to it, is essentially just like a quick overview of each of the 5 Express or the 5 M0 boards, the links to the guides for those, and then like highlighting 2 learn guides or projects or something that can be done with them. That's the part I'm not sure about. The question, like basically trying to add a curated CircuitPython link page to that, I think would just be not reasonable.
Yeah,
I might say, go ahead.
Oh no,
sorry.
please.
Yeah, like you wouldn't want someplace where it's going to get out of date and stuff. Yeah, like and it should be ideally kind of like at the product, like a CircuitPython product. This should be a really easy featured kind of like right next to, here's all the details on using this product, and then here's oh, you don't know about CircuitPython, click this thing and boom, like here's this nice landing page that tells you all about it, something like that.
I was going to suggest that you look at this in terms of an outcome orientation, that you have a product orientation that is necessary if you're maintaining a catalog and you're trying to help people buy things that they need. But more importantly, I think people need to know, how do I approach my outcome? What is it that I need to do to accomplish something? And then when you lay that out, you're going to end up with people who are curious. You're going to end up with beginners. You're going to end up with a couple of gradients of people who are experienced. And then you're going to have expert folks that are going to be writing your drivers and things for you. And I think if your documentation allows those things to exist simultaneously, then you've got this outcome orientation that makes it easier to manage the documentation within that realm, while maintaining that documentation that you need for the catalog and helping people shop. So I think sitting down with, we used to do this where I worked. We used to do this. We'd sit down with a whiteboard. We'd say, what are all the outcomes that we need to support here? And That's basically looking at your user levels and then deciding who's going to be on our team, who's going to be in charge of laying that out. I don't think it's really difficult to make the documentation a natural part of the development activity, because you guys are down and dirty into the technical stuff. And that's a really difficult place to think from about those outcomes that your customers and your users may have. You may need somebody who's just dedicated to dealing with what are the outcomes that we need to document.
I think the other part of it that's hard with that is we don't have our entire customer base able to sit down with us on a whiteboard. So as we go, that interaction starts to happen, but it happens slowly over the course of a few months because CircuitPython's so new. And as we go, I think we are working towards that type of thing with the documentation. It's a great suggestion, and I think that's exactly what we're trying to do. It's just happening a lot slower because until people have these boards and are using them and then come and interact with us, we don't have that information. We don't know the use cases. We don't know, what guide needs to be updated in a way that, includes something else, or what, needs to change, because we're coming from, like you're saying, a more technical standpoint. And for me, I'm still new enough that, or was not all that long ago, so I've got it in my mind, like the things I wished I had when I started. So I think it's I feel like what's getting written right now is starting to work towards that, but it's a matter of, like, the stuff you were talking about earlier, Seagrover, that's the stuff we need to hear, because you're exactly the type of person that we need to make sure that the documentation is happening for. And until you've used it and found us and come to us, we don't know what's needed.
Yeah, I understand that. I think, and I'm a big believer in use cases and that approach to developing systems and projects. But by the same token, we've all been through that at some point in our experience. And so there's quite a bit of that we can anticipate. And then you can fine tune it later. And that's really what I'm saying, is that I'll bet you that, with the shared experiences that we've all had here in this, you could probably come up with a pretty good set of outcomes that would hit about an 80% case.
Yeah, I think
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my take on it is that we've heard that we need to keep experimenting with how our documentation's organized, and I think we're doing that. As far as outcomes, I think that's why the guide approach to, like, here's a project you can build with something is really powerful. But I don't think that that's enough, right? Like, we've heard that people don't know where to start still, so we're still experimenting with all the different ways that we can try to onboard people.
I think the general kind of feedback, though, is, think of the use cases, and I totally agree. Like, that's how all kind of software development I've done really comes back to, is a little bit more upfront kind of planning of, like, who are the people that are going to see CircuitPython. You've got, like, your total beginner who's never programmed, never done any embedded development at all. You've got someone who might have some embedded and some programming knowledge. I think of them as the Arduino user. Like, they ran through the getting started with Arduino. They probably have some Arduino boards. They feel confident in that, but maybe they have no Python knowledge, and this is a whole new world for them. But they still know how that hardware works, and so they're starting from a slightly different place. And then you've got your pro programmers, like people who know Python, maybe don't know hardware as much, but just want to figure out, okay, what hardware and how do I get this to work? So I think, understanding those users, and then each one has a slightly different set of needs as far as, like, what they want to see and how they want to get started. And I don't think it necessarily means that, like, there has to be 3 separate guides for this or something. I think it's just whatever page is the landing page needs to take into account all of those different users and what their expectations are, and just maybe, like, it's a section or something, or like, just think of any marketing page when you hit whatever. Think of whatever random startup is selling whatever thing. They're always, you go to that page and it's like, oh, why are you here? Like, are you interested in this? Oh, go here. Are you interested in that? Go here. Are you interested in that? And so I think of it like some page should be, oh, are you new to programming completely? Check this guide out that goes into more kind of beginner detail. Or, oh, you're coming from Arduino, check this guide out, or something. So
right.
That's kind
I think, Tony, I think in comparison to the Arduino user too, I think you have a lot of users who are going to go to the guides, download the examples, and execute them, and then maybe open them up and look at them and try and learn something about Python and use them. But I think that's a critical user.
So
The examples are there, but when people start stumbling on just making them work because either the libraries aren't in place or things won't fit because they're trying to run an example that won't fit on a trinket. Those are the places I think where people are getting tripped up a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
But they're just trying to use the examples without actually looking at them.
Yeah.
Or looking at how to install the library in the first place. Yes, I know. So I guess my thing that just popped into my head is, do we want to try and make a guide that's 90% mirrored pages, or I don't know, 98% mirrored pages, that looks like Circuit Playground Express or Trinket or Gemma, in the sense that we grab the CircuitPython guides and just mirror them all into one guide?
You mean like the digital I/O and all that?
Yeah. So instead of having like, and I don't know how we'd write. I mean, really, I guess whatever example we use may or may not work for whatever board they have, because they may not have a button if we use, whatever, and they may not have the, the LAS 3DH breakout to use with their feather or whatever. But this seems to be what people want, is like a central place where all those things are. So what if we did one that, instead of it being Circuit Playground Express with all those examples, it's just Circuit Python with all those examples? I don't know. It just popped into my head. I
mean, I think with your guide, I think you're on the right track of just directing people to the board specific ones, because then we can document it better.
Right.
And I also don't want us to be too frantic about this as well. I think that a lot of this is simply because it's young. Like, comparing to Arduino, like, people come in and be like, why aren't you as good as Arduino? Well, Arduino's been around a decade, right? Like, there's a lot of
Python's been a year.
Yeah, there's a lot of institutional knowledge, and there's a lot of just stuff you can Google for that helps that experience as well. So I would caution against being too frantic with our docs, because I fear that would lead us to being less focused. So I think in response to the stuff we've heard, I think the concrete ideas we have of like top level learn guide, learn category, a welcome to CircuitPython guide with links out to the specific board ones, I think that's a good enough step in the right direction, that we should do that first before we worry too much about everything else.
I agree. And I also agree significantly with what Jerry was saying. I think people are rushing through the board, or the, like the Circuit Playground Express and the Gemma and Trinket stuff, and just not like that. Then they get done with all those things and they want an intro to CircuitPython. And it's like, well, you just had one. Like, did you try to learn the things that were in there, or did you just download a bunch of stuff and run it? And I feel like maybe that's what's happening, because I feel like those guides really do cover a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think if we're looking, I think we can just improve the discoverability to begin with. And as we add material, there will be more material to discover. Because, yeah, I mean, and I agree. The forum post stuff that we're talking about, there are people with different goals. There are instructors who are looking for a curriculum. There are people who are looking for a particular project. There are people who just want to learn CircuitPython. And there's no one size fits all on that stuff. And we'll end up writing different things for different people. There'll be books, and so forth. Right now, I think there's some simple things we can do for discoverability, like improving the landing page, improving the search results, and maybe having a single promoted top level, guide or two that just sort of says, like, here's some other searches you can do to find this stuff. And then redoing the categorization. And those are all things that will just improve discoverability and don't really require writing some massive intro document or something like that. Right. So
I think there was a comment made in that forum post that I think maybe it trying to read too much into it, and it was, again, I think one of them came from an educator who's trying to decide whether to use this as a classroom project, and I can see where there it's that's not a good. It's a tough environment for something that is still evolving quickly, and so one of the questions is it ready for that, and is that there, or is there something that needs to be done to address that particular audience more quickly, or not? Because otherwise, I think it's yeah, I agree with the comments before that you don't want to overreact in trying to rush through stuff. That there's the people who are truly interested in just experimenting and playing with the thing are going to come and ask questions and are pretty patient, and are willing to explore.
Right.
But it's the really novice user who's just lost, who just stumbles across it, buys one, and wants to make it do something that gets confused pretty easily. And I think there's a lot out there to help them. And again, the burden should be on them to get the basics going and then get moving. But this class of whether CircuitPython is ready for the educational market is one that I think on a higher level you need to be looking at a little bit.
Well, I think that there's been examples of people who have taught it, though. And if that's the case, then obviously it's possible. It's just you may have to write your own curriculum. Like, you may have to go through those projects and write your own curriculum. We don't have available to you, a 10-week curriculum that you could just hand your class. I think that's kind of what I felt came out of that forum post, like, as I was reading it, because like that just clicked as you were talking about that. It just clicked to me that they specifically said, I can orient myself, but I'm not going to ask my students to do that. So orient it, write it up in a way that you think your students can orient it, and maybe it's that.
Maybe again, so I think there may be a misconception being stated there that maybe is not important because it's just one forum post and that's okay. But if I don't know if there's a response needed, or that it's
I think Scott's right that it just needs time.
Yeah, no, I agree, and again, it's made an amazing progress in a short amount of time, and whether it's just if people's expectations are somewhere different than where it is, I don't know if that needs a response or not.
Yeah, I think.
Well, I think that was a really important point. That I'm not sure that when I go to the CircuitPython environment, the page, the products, I don't get a feeling that this is not ready for prime time. I get a feeling that this is a product that you're supporting. And
well, the question is, what does that mean, right? Like, does that mean curriculum?
And
I don't think so.
And that's my point. I think if you're very clear about that and you explain that often, and make sure that all your product pages say something about, we're flying this plane while we're making it, while we're building it.
Right.
And we really appreciate you being part of the journey with this. Please give us your feedback. There's a really good way to continually engage people on this as you're developing it and make them part of the solution. I think the forums do that naturally, but when you're looking at the products in a catalog, it really doesn't do that.
That was a big part of the Welcome to the Community guide. I'm wondering if we should, I don't know, I'm wondering whether that's something worth actually putting on the product pages.
Probably.
That's what I'm suggesting, that it'd be something that it's always in the face of the people who are shopping.
Yeah.
Because that covers the community and all the ways that you can, respond and full of encouragement to become part of it and tell us what you're thinking and tell us what you're doing and tell us what you need. Like, that was the whole point of that guide. So maybe we should.
Yeah, and
I can drop an email about that.
In general, when it comes to the focus of things, my focus is on the beginner that's trying to teach themselves. So what does that mean? That means that I'm always thinking about how that person who's never programmed before is going to take a board and what does their first 5-10 minutes look like. And I think that's where we should put our time and effort. I think
Mm-hmm.
like assistive tech, like AT Maker stuff, like you
Mm-hmm.
get, it's very similar in that if you focus on that beginner, you focus on assistive tech, you end up benefiting a lot more people as a result of that focus. And so I think that for the core of us here, our focus should be that, but we should also continue to be very focused on enabling other people to do what they think is important. So if somebody comes to us and says, why don't you have this 10-week curriculum? You say, well, that's not a focus for us, but we're more than happy to answer questions you have as you build that. Or I think Andon's focus, for example, is taking, like, helping people who understand Arduino and getting them into CircuitPython. That's not a focus for me, but I'm more than willing to help Andon do that. So I think there's a line for us to draw where these are things that we're actively going to develop content for, and then there's other things that we'd love to see happen, and we'll do what we can to help you make that happen. And
I think that's perfectly put.
Yeah.
Can I admit that I haven't looked at the guides in detail lately, but I think a lot, and that is, it is fairly easy to corrupt a board.
Yeah.
We've all seen that.
Yep.
So I hope that almost should be the second thing on the board after welcome to CircuitPython is don't worry when you break it. Here's how you fix it.
Yeah.
That because it comes up so often, and people shouldn't have to come even looking for help on that at all. It should be something they really see up front, that this is a normal part of working with these things. Don't worry about it. Just follow these steps and you're back on track.
We added a troubleshooting page to
Right.
every CircuitPython section of all the boards.
Okay, I'll take a look.
That covers that in some pretty solid detail. It took the stuff out of Read the Docs because Read the Docs just wasn't,
Right.
and actually links the
Okay,
files,
good.
so you
Good.
don't
I
have to
haven't
find
seen
the
that one.
files and all of that. Yeah.
And that's something we could actually add, like a call out to the project guides as well, saying, oh, did you see this happen? Like, go here because it's probably broken.
Right.
That's another thing we could do. It's just for the individual project guides, we could have a link out to the troubleshooting
Because
as well.
again, you've done an amazing job of making it so easy to recover. That really is slick.
Yeah.
Do you think that it should be even easier to? I mean, we could put a REPL call in. I guess a lot of people who are having this problem don't even know how to connect to the REPL, but we could put a reformat call in storage or something.
Yeah.
And
it certainly would be handy. Again, I think you're right. I was shocked after the first couple of times I got involved in trying to help people realize that oh god, I can't assume people can even use a REPL. But it's that would probably be an easy, useful tool. I don't know. It can go either way. I mean, in some ways, reformatting shouldn't be too easy.
Yeah.
You have to think about it before you do it. So I can go either way on that.
Right. The name is reformat_dangerous. The other thing about the forum post, I mean, I think even though we may think that the emphasis is different, I think it's good to answer. I mean, I'm thinking of answering those people in a kind of a polite, friendly way to say, oh, we're working on this stuff, and if you're working on a curriculum, we'd love to see it. And just because what happens is that kind of thing, if it's not responded to, it just stands there, and then when people are browsing, they see it, and they have a negative impression.
Yeah, and
I agree completely. I think exactly what Scott said about how, it's not something that we're focusing on, but if it's something that you're focusing on, we're willing to help you build that, I think is a great thing, because we're telling them, despite the fact that we don't have this thing you want, we are willing to support what we do have and support you creating the thing you need.
Right. And so I'm gonna, if you don't care, I'll write, I'll write some nice response to that. So
yeah, I mean, I think as Kattni said, like, it falls under we're not focused on developing the content ourselves, but we are focused on developing the people to create the content.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
responding to people who say that, like, even if they come across as entitled, which is an issue I have sometimes, being friendly back to them and saying like, well, it's not a focus for us, but we're happy to enable you to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I just took a look at that troubleshooting guide. That's perfect. Sorry, I hadn't looked at it.
Oh no, it's all good.
There's so many
Oh, that's
updates.
there's the discoverability thing again. Is that
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Right.
Well, we're an hour 10 minutes, so I think we should call it.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for sticking through this pretty average length, I guess, CircuitPython Weekly. It happens every week, usually on Mondays, but we do have a couple US holidays coming up, so we'll announce shortly what we want to do for that. Next week, we should be able to do Monday just fine. But after that, we'll hit Christmas and New Year's, so we'll have to figure out what we want to do around that. If people want to join, it's on every Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time in the US on the Adafruit Discord, which is ADAFRUIT. Well, that's Adafruit. Put a dot before the IT/Discord. That'll get you into our Discord channel. We're in the text chat all week if you want to ask questions and chat with us. We're always there. And then we're in the voice chat during the meeting as well. So drop in and say hi if this is something you're interested in. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We can chat a little bit afterwards informally as well.